Alright, hey everyone, this is Ash. Welcome back to the King's Speech. So, I haven't done One Piece videos for a while now, because as you all know, I lost interest in doing these kind of videos a while back, and while I've been skimming the chapters as they come out, I haven't really had any desire to kind of critique or comment on what's happening in this series, because there really wasn't much to say. It wasn't really much for me to say regarding it. But that said, this most recent chapter and the fan reactions to it, and some of the preceding ones as well, had kind of pissed me off a little bit. And so I wanted to talk about them a little bit and talk about why I dislike these last couple of chapters and things. But before we get into that, some other business we need to address before we dive into the videos proper. So as I've been saying in the last couple of weeks in my other videos, please continue to bear witness to the genocide happening in Palestine right now. Continue calling and emailing your elected representatives and applying pressure on them so that they call for a ceasefire at the bare minimum. There's a Huffington Post piece recently, I'll try to link it in the description for this video below, but in it they interview congressional staff working for Biden and the others, and they talk about how the calls are putting pressure on these fucking ghouls, even if their responses to it have been particularly inhumane. I know in this the staffers talk about how the Congress people either tell them to brush off the comments they're getting or let all the critiques and like voicemail, all the calls they're getting go to voicemail, or they're saying like, whatever, they're going to vote for me anyway. So keep the pressure on these ghouls. Keep continuing to boost the voice of Palestinians. Protest if you are able. Keep your identity safe though if you are going out to protest, because the police will crack down on these. So please do it safely, but please do continue to protest at least. We do need to kind of make our voices heard with regards to this. And as always, if you do like my content, if you want to support me, please do like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. As YouTube's algorithm really likes it when you do that, and it really does mean a lot to me to see the kind of silent support of seeing people, press the like button, leave a comment saying they enjoyed the video. It really does inspire me to keep creating content when I see support like that. So if you'd like to do that, I would really greatly appreciate it. But yeah, so with that out of the way, let's get into my issues with this chapter of One Piece. Obviously, spoilers for One Piece, the recent chapter that came out, as well as the recent Egghead arc. So if you haven't caught up already, skim a summary, I don't know, do whatever before you come back to this video. But yeah, spoilers abound. So right now, in the story, in the arc right now, we're getting backstory for Kuma and what his whole deal is. What happened to him joining the revolutionaries, all that. And there's been intense speculation on whether or not he's Bonney's biological father and who the mother is, yada, yada, yada. And so setting aside the stupidity of seeing people trying to actually debate whether Ginny, the new character that was introduced, was Luffy's mom because, she eats meat. She was shown gnawing on a hunk of meat on bone like Luffy always does. And because she has a big appetite, there's been some really stupid, rampant speculation that maybe it was supposed to be Luffy's mom and it's a fake out for her being Bonnie's mom, even though Bonney was introduced as, was it the glutton or big eater as her epithet for when she was introduced from the supernovas. So yeah, so despite the very obvious setup of Ginny being Bonnie's mom, people are still speculating on which could possibly be Luffy's mom instead. And of course, this being an Oda flashback means we were also obviously being set up for her to die at some point. I don't think anyone should have been shocked or surprised by that. But because of all of this, and because of how Oda writes women in general, I had absolutely low to no expectations for Ginny's character or any development that she's going to receive at all. And despite the fact I should not be surprised at how low Oda will go, he managed to even disgust me with what actually happened to her, what the circumstances of her surrounding her death were. So yeah, again, spoilers for the recent chapter. In the one that just came out, I think it was, is it 1098? So we find out that Ginny's squad in the Revolutionary Army was ambushed by the world government, and that they were all annihilated except for Ginny, who was then taken to Marijoa to be the wife of a celestial dragon, because apparently she caught the eye of one of them whenever he somehow managed to see her, demanded she be made his wife, so her unit was annihilated. She was captured and abducted to become a Celestial Dragon's wife. And then 2 years later, she was basically thrown out of the thing, disowned by the Celestial Dragon, because she had gotten struck from some disease that, when she was exposed to sunlight, would make her body sprout like some blue mineral. The way Oda drew it looks very much like scales forming on your body. But yeah, she ended up somehow making her way back to Sorbet Kingdom. She contacted Kuma and the revolutionary armies from there, and he managed to make it back just in time he didn't make it back just in time. He managed to get there right after she was passed away. Just in time to learn she had died, and she had brought baby Bonney back with her as well. And that's when he was told, like, oh yeah, that she has this disease that, like, when she's exposed to sunlight, makes like all these minerals go, and like, oh, it must have been very, very painful for her to have made this journey, and all that nonsense. But yeah, so let's start our analysis by stating by now what should be very obvious to everyone in the fandom, but because you all are just guzzling the Kool-Aid at this point, you all refuse to see it or acknowledge it, in that Oda's never beating the misogynist allegations. This man absolutely hates and despises women with every fiber of his being, and I am tired of seeing you all pretend like that isn't true, just because he isn't being overt about it and saying, like, oh, women should be raped, or like, oh, women should be beaten up and stay silent. Just because he isn't an openly violent misogynist, you all apparently just think, like, oh, that's how you spot abusers. They're just very vocal and open about their misogyny. That's how come they get away with it all the time. But yeah, 'cause there was absolutely no reason that Ginny needed to be abducted, raped, and then stricken with a disease, only to end up then dying in service of Kuma's story. And even if Oda had actually managed to make her, a nuanced character with any kind of depth and complexity, like even an iota of it, it would not merit this sort of treatment to a female character. But he didn't, because she existed solely to pile on even more pointless tragedy porn onto Kuma's arc, because Oda has a pathological need to showcase exactly how he views women and the narrative role and functions that they serve in his story. And it's been absolutely astounding to see how many excuses fans will go through to talk about this and be like, oh, this is peak cinema. Oh my god, it's so great. It's like, I've never cried so hard. This is the greatest tragedy Oda's ever written. When it's literally the literary equivalent of a montage video of like drowning puppies, and someone being like, oh my god, watch these poor kittens and puppies being drowned because they're riddled with cancer. Like, oh, it's so tragic. And you all are like, oh, the point of the flashback was to show how much Kuma suffered and how resilient he is, because even after all of this, he's such a kind and gentle soul. And it shows how depraved the Celestial Dragons are. Like, oh my god, I didn't think there was a depravity that they could do that. I wouldn't be surprised by it, but they keep shocking me all the time. Like, the amount of takes like this I've seen, especially from that stupid fuck that runs the Library of Ohara's site, talking about like, I'll aspire to be more like Kuma. He didn't blame God or people or anyone else for circumstances. He just continued to be kind and gentle. Like, this is why you guys, the fandom infuriates me so much. Because you're just showcasing how shallowly liberal swaths of you are. And it has been so infuriating to watch and see. So let me get this straight. So child Kuma being enslaved by the Celestial Dragons because of his race and heritage, that wasn't enough. His mother being killed by the grueling conditions of her enslavement, that wasn't enough. His father then being shot while trying to cheer him up and distract him from the fact that his mother was basically worked to death. And, it's like his father trying to do like a singing, dancing song to cheer up his son, and then getting shot in front of him, that wasn't enough. Being taken to an island to be hunted for sport, that wasn't enough. But Ginny being kidnapped, raped, and then dying to disease, like, that's the clincher. Like, that's what we needed to wrap this story up. That's the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Like, why? What exactly about that specific tragedy informs an aspect of Kuma's character that the previous ones didn't? Like, what exactly about the way she was abducted and died and the way that Kuma found her, what exactly informs us about an aspect of Kuma's character? What does that tell us about him? Please explain it to me as if I was 5 years old. And as for we need to showcase how depraved the celestial dragons are. At this point, who have had any doubts about what they're capable of? Back in Sabaody, we already learned that the celestial dragons like to kidnap and rape random women who they find attractive, and then they throw them away when they're done. This has already been established. We know Carlos, the same guy that kidnapped a woman from Sabaody, wanted to buy Kami the mermaid so that he could see whether she could outrun his piranhas. So again, at what point did you come to believe there was a limit to the depravity these people would commit? Like in Luffy's flashback, we see that they burned down an entire slum in preparation for the Celestial Dragon's arrival. So again, where exactly did you think, these people have a limit to exactly what they're going to be able to do? Like, what exactly in Kuma's flashback is somehow worse than what we've seen them do before in the story? Exactly. Then you have the other argument of, Egghead is a parallel to Sabaody. Again, how? Because both arcs involve celestial dragons? Because Kuma's in both arcs? Because Bonney is in both arcs is suddenly a parallel? Oh, is it because Egghead tangentially touches on slavery? Or is it because Kuma's involved in both arcs? Like, just because Oda recycles certain plot points over and over and over again, just because we have the same setup for every individual arc, the Straw Hats show up, they find out the kingdom is in trouble, they find out why the kingdom is in trouble, they depose whoever put the kingdom in that in the first place. Everyone cheers about them even though they thought the Straw Hats were the villains eventually. Straw Hats eventually become the heroes. They throw a big party. Rinse and repeat. Like, just because Oda recycles these same plot points over and over and over again, just because he likes going back to the same tired narrative well that he likes to draw from over and over and over again, does not mean that he's drawing any parallels between these two narratives. But y'all are like the men in black from Westworld, who need to convince yourselves that there's some deeper hidden meaning in this fantasy world of yours. And you're like, if I don't find you, my life has lost all meaning. Like, what is my purpose if I don't find this hidden meaning? And that's the clincher, isn't it? Because you all realize how empty and pointless your lives are. So you spend so much time analyzing the themes and messages of a cartoon, of which the author has stated multiple times that he flies by the seat of his pants, and all these big epic moments that you think he's foreshadowed and planned since the beginning, he's literally done because he's been like, I just decided to make this change at the last minute. Or an editor told me, why don't you introduce this? And he decided to introduce it, and it becomes a pivotal moment. And because he was used to be good at integrating it really well into his story, you all think that, this can't have been, just inspired by accident. It can't have been accidental. It must have been planned since the beginning. And he has even said on multiple occasions that he basically openly disdains his audience, and he changes things on the fly if he feels like someone's guessed it because he doesn't think it's interesting. So what exactly about this man makes you think he actually plans and plots things in advance? And the thing that gets me is you all love this idea that there's something divine or aspirational about someone preaching kindness and niceness and gentleness after going through the literal shit ringer, because it absolves you of the responsibility of analyzing the material and oppressive structures that led that person to that position in the first place. It's why Oda and the revolutionaries' pathetic attempts at being radical or leftist fail, because you all want to point the finger at an individual or a group of individuals and be like, they're the ones to blame. They're the cause of all of life's problems. And you'll all just turn a blind eye to the systems that uplift and uphold them. Because if you think about it for a second, where do you think the Celestial Dragon's power comes from exactly? Fighters like Garling and his Holy Knights aside, most of the Celestial Dragons are weak-ass cowards who do not lift a thing to do something by themselves. So how do you think they're able to subjugate and oppress people the world over? How do you think they're able to organize these human hunts that have absolutely no resistance to all these depravities they're committing? Exactly. Do you think it would be possible that do you think they would be able to do this if it weren't for the police, the Marines being on their side? And if that's the case, why do you think the Marines just do whatever the Celestial Dragons say if they didn't materially benefit from the proximity to the systems they represent? They're not duty-bound to obey the Celestial Dragons, nor do the Elder Stars cast some kind of obedience spell on them and be like, it's not like every Marine had one of those collars from Sabaudi locked around their necks when they were conscripted and been told, if you don't listen to whatever we say, we're going to blow this and blow your head off. None of that is true. They support the system because they benefit from and want to reap the rewards of it, even if bodies need to be fed into the grinder. But it's easier for you all to say you just have to accept your lot in life, right? You can't change anything, so you can just blame all your misfortune on an act of God and become a model citizen in the hopes that, good things will come down your way. Freedom from oppression will eventually trickle its way down to you. Once you depose the Celestial Dragons, everything will be hunky-dory. We'll build a utopia. Everything will just suddenly burst into rainbows and song. Because it's so much easier to just think I just have to wait for good things to happen to me rather than having to fight tooth and nail and grab it with your own hands. Y'all will spend hours upon hours upon hours analyzing pictures and minute details in panels being oh my god, is that the sun symbol in all these panels? What's the connection? And you'll theorize on what the hidden meaning could be. What secrets has Goda's foreshadowing clearly seeded liberally throughout the series. And the thing is, you all think you and Oda are the Ricks of the world. And it really must have stung to realize you're actually Jerry's the whole time, huh? And if we're being really, really honest, cribbing an aesthetic and outfitting your character in it doesn't mean that you are in any way knowledgeable about said subject or that you're exploring something related to it. Someone really went out there with their whole chest and said, I'm so glad Oda doesn't demonize religion with Kuma, as though he has any understanding of it apart from the stereotypical images of it being associated with kindness and forgiveness. Of course, Kuma has a Bible, Oda must be doing, talking about Christianity. When exactly is he talking about? How exactly is he exploring it? Is he Christian? No. Does he have any experience with it? No. Has he done any reading on it? I doubt it. It was so blatantly obvious to me reading it that Kim was basically discount Bear Jesus based on every single stereotype you can have about, Jesus is kind and good to people. Especially when he's doing that stupid, I'm literally taking on people's pain. Oh, look at me, the metaphor couldn't be more in your face. I am Jesus. But I guess I really shouldn't have expected better from an author that's deals in stereotypes and a fandom that's blind to it. But I guess your eyeballs must be really sweaty from getting off on all that trauma porn, constantly being shoved into your faces. Because if you took even an iota of the brain power you've used on speculating on, is Ginny Luffy's mom or is it Bonney's mom? Maybe you'd question why a vast majority of Oda's women have one body shape, or what the possible connection would be between the one flavor of queer stereotype he has in his manga and the fact that one of his main characters is an overt homophobe and transphobe. Maybe you'd question why the man that you claim respects women frequently jokes about how he wished his underage character fighting in the chainmail bikini didn't wear panties, or how mothers are the antithesis of adventure, and how many dead mothers are in his manga series. Funny how that there's no dead fathers, and the series really loves to romance the deadbeat fathers that do exist in there. But I'm sure that doesn't mean anything. Or how if women critique the designs of your female characters, you should respond with, you need to remain steadfast in the face of this criticism. Or how about the time when he said if Shonen Jump ever got its first ever female editor, he hopes it's a woman with giant ass titties because that would motivate him to work harder. Right? But thinking about that would mean coming to realize that all these jokes are just your garden variety misogyny and sexism on how you view women as objects who really only exist for men's pleasure and for furthering men's narratives. But y'all actually don't want to say that out loud, so you hide it behind the guise of being a joke. And that's why y'all are the Jerrys of the One Piece world. Because y'all are inherently weak-willed cowards that aren't brave enough to be openly misogynist because you know you can't handle the heat if people were to call you out on it. And the thing that gets me is, you claim Oda's this creative genius with limitless ideas, endless, boundless creativity. But somehow the best he can come up with is always reaching his hand into that dead mother cookie jar. In every single flashback, oh, what do I do for this character? How do I inspire them? What tragedy befell them? Dead mother cookie jar. What about this other character? Dead mother cookie jar. Like, that's the most radical idea he can come up with for what would inspire this character to want to revolutionize the world, to free people from oppression. What could possibly inspire them? Dead mother cookie jar. The idea that always keeps on giving, right? It's pathetic. Anyways, if you enjoyed this mini rant, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Like I said at the beginning, please continue supporting Palestine in any way you can. It really, really is important that you do not stay silent on the genocide that's happening there right now. This said, like I said, I'm not going to do many more One Piece videos like this. I do have a few projects related to it I have on the back burner, but that will probably be released or done closer to when the series ends. I'll do kind of a retrospective on it at that point, but at this point, I'm tired of this series, and I'm tired of the fandom as a whole. I hope you all did enjoy this video, apart from that. And until next time, this is Ash. I'll talk to you all later.